Hey there. Tonight, you'll visit a casino, but not the kind you know. No lights, no velvet, just a dirt floor, a cracked table, and men with nothing to lose. This was the medieval casino, loud with shouting, heavy with smoke, and slick with spilled ale. The dice were bone, the stakes were real, and no one ever truly won. You came with coin or pride. You left without both. And still, you came back. So dim the lights, lie down somewhere warm, and let yourself sink into what gambling was really like, when losing meant more than money. The door doesn't creak. It groans. Heavy wood swollen with ale-soaked air and years of being slammed open. You don't step in, you're pulled. The warmth isn't welcoming. It's the kind that coats your skin in other people's sweat. You smell the room before you see it. Spilt beer, wet wool, old meat, cheap soap. Then the noise hits. Laughter, yes, but it's not joy. It's sharp, defensive, almost frantic. Shouts rise from dark corners. The sound of fists on wood, the snap of dice bouncing across uneven surfaces. You haven't taken a seat, haven't said a word, but already your name is somewhere on the air, spoken in a language of glances and guesses. A man you've never seen gives you a look that stays too long. Another, hunched in the corner, taps his fingers with a rhythm that doesn't match the music. You realize you're holding your breath, not out of fear, but to keep from breathing too much of this place in. The game has started, and you're already playing. Your boots stick just slightly with each step, like the floor has made its own decision about who stays and who goes. You pass a man sleeping upright, his chin folded into his chest, hands still curled like he's holding dice. No one pays him any mind. Near the fire, two women lean close, not whispering, just speaking in a register too soft for you to hear, even though they're watching you as you pass. At a crooked table, someone slams their hand down and demands a recount. No one listens. Coins clink. A chair drags loudly. Every sound interrupts another, until the room feels like it's swallowing itself. You thought you were arriving. You were wrong. You were absorbed. The tavern doesn't welcome. It absorbs. No greeting, no ceremony. Just 100 tiny cues that remind you this is a place for losing. Coins, time, names, pieces of yourself you won't notice missing until much later. The walls are too close. Not in measurement, but in sensation. Every corner hides something, someone. You don't know what, but you assume the worst, because that's safer. You check for exits without meaning to. The main door, the kitchen swing door, a staircase that leads somewhere darker. You smell metal and meat, though you see neither. Someone knocks over a mug, and the contents reach your boot. No one apologizes. You don't react. Reactions mark you. The barkeep wipes a rag across the same part of the counter again and again, staring past you as if you're already forgotten. In the far back, a man with one eye spins a coin on the table over and over. Not playing. Just spinning. You think you recognize someone, then realize it's just a face that resembles regret. Everyone here looks like they've seen something they can't unsee. Maybe you will too if you stay long enough. Maybe you already have. You reach for your coin pouch, not to spend, just to feel that it's still there. It is. For now. Your hand moves away slowly, like that gesture alone might attract attention. You haven't spoken, haven't sat, haven't asked for a drink, but you've entered the current. That's all it takes. Presence is participation. Every eye that flicked toward you, every breath drawn in after yours, every dice throw since you arrived. It all registers. You are now part of the room's memory, and rooms like this never forget. You try to find a table that feels less dangerous than the rest, but none of them look kind. The closest thing to comfort is indifference, and so you hover. One step from commitment, one step from retreat. But retreat to what? The night outside is no quieter, the cold no more forgiving. The door behind you doesn't open easily, not in either direction. You don't remember when you stopped being a visitor. You're here now, and the game began before you even touched the door. The dice are simple. 6 sides. Carved by hand, worn uneven at the corners, pitted with age and sweat, and maybe blood. They clack across the surface like little bones trying to tell a story. And they do, honestly. They land how they land. They don't remember who threw them last. They don't owe anyone anything. They don't pretend. But the men around them, that's different. You see it right away. Fingers too quick. A wrist that twists too sharply. A glance that darts across the room just before the roll. The shift of a boot beneath the table. These games were never about chance. They're about perception. Who looks confident? Who looks desperate? Who blinks? You think it's about the numbers, but it's about the space between them. The hesitation before a hand moves. The way someone reaches for their drink with their left hand when they're right-handed. The dice are innocent. The hands that throw them are not. You watch the way they all lean in, pretending not to care. You see the man with the chipped tooth lift his hand slowly, theatrically, like he's letting fate decide. But you know better. He's palmed a second die. Or maybe the edges are shaved. Maybe the table tilts slightly toward him. Maybe the others know and let it happen because tonight it's not their turn to lose. The rules here are flexible, but the lies are rigid. Everyone is lying about something. How much they have, how much they owe, how many rounds they've played. You don't ask questions because no one answers. Not truthfully, not without motive. You remember hearing once that liars blink more often. That's not true here. These men stare, unbroken, because even the blinking might be a tell, or a tactic. You don't know anymore, and the longer you stay, the more you understand that not knowing is safer. Someone accuses someone, not loudly, just enough for the rest of the table to pause. A name is said, maybe real, maybe borrowed. The accused smiles. That smile, a slow curve that never reaches the eyes, says everything. He doesn't deny it. He doesn't need to. The accusation was a bluff, or a test, or a distraction. The game resumes, louder, faster. A coin slips off the table and is gone before it hits the floor. Someone kicks it into the shadows. Another player adjusts his seat, and a new blade flashes briefly at his hip. You look down at your hands and wonder how long before they, too, start to move without your full consent. Before you start hiding things in your sleeve. Before you start making noises with your throat to signal something only someone else understands. Before your face stops showing what you feel. Not because you learned to lie, but because you forgot how to be honest. At the center of it all, the dice keep falling. They hit the table, spin, stop. They roll over spilled beer and bloodstains. They tumble through smoke and silence and shouting. They don't lie. They never do. But when someone leans over them and declares the result, it isn't the dice that speak. It's the man. And his voice is part of the game, too. Just loud enough. Just confident enough. Just practiced enough to erase doubt. Maybe the others saw what truly landed. Maybe they didn't. Maybe they're letting it slide because they know it's safer to lose small now and win big later. Or maybe they're planning something else. You don't ask. You don't speak. You keep your eyes open and your mouth shut. That's how you stay here. That's how you avoid becoming the next story whispered about the man who cheated wrong. The man who thought dice were the only things that mattered. The man who learned too late that the real danger was never in the throw. It was in the hands that made it. You didn't bring coins, not enough to matter. Maybe a few coppers, maybe one silver piece tucked into your boot heel for safety. But that's gone now, slipped away with the first roll. You didn't come here to win. You came here to stay, to keep your seat, to keep your place, to keep some shape of belonging in a room that eats people for sport. And when the coins are gone, you look down, really look, and take stock. Your boots are worn but sturdy. Not new, but still good leather. Someone would want them. You slide one halfway off under the table and show just enough of the sole to catch another player's eye. No words, just the movement. You nod once. The understanding passes silently. That boot becomes a wager. Suddenly, you're barefoot, or nearly so, and still playing. It feels absurd. But everything here does. The game's logic is internal. The outside world doesn't matter once the dice start moving. Next is your belt knife. Not fancy, functional. The kind someone else might use to clean a fish or open a parcel, or stab a man who looks too long at their winnings. You don't take it out all the way. Just shift in your seat and let the hilt show. Another nod, another round. The knife leaves your side and enters the table's memory. You're lighter, more exposed. The losses aren't just about currency now. They're about identity. You reach for the ring on your smallest finger. Iron, not gold. Sentimental, not valuable. But to someone else, it's a token, a charm, a lucky piece. You slide it off without letting yourself hesitate and place it on the table. It spins briefly before tipping over, silent but decisive. That ring was yours for years. Now it belongs to the mood of the room. If you win, you might take it back. But no one ever really wins here. They just delay the taking. Around you, others do the same. A woman bets her braid ribbon, frayed and wine-stained. A boy lays down a carved wooden token, likely stolen. One man slips out a brooch still glinting with someone else's grief. The items vary, but the act is the same. This is not just gambling, it's disassembly. You break yourself into parts and place each piece at the mercy of strangers. You're not just betting what you have, you're betting what you are. What you carried in with you because it made you feel real. One player tears a page from a book. Another offers the last of his tobacco. A third removes the laces from his own tunic, folding them like treasure. Nothing is too small, too strange, too shameful. If it can be handed over, it has value. If it can be lost, it becomes a stake. You start to wonder what else you could offer. A promise? A secret? A favor owed? The boundaries stretch, and the room bends with them. Soon, the table is cluttered with tokens of desperation. Not gold, not jewels, but the detritus of lives barely held together. You feel naked, even though you're still dressed. Just less so, and lighter in a way that isn't freedom. The air shifts, someone laughs, and it's not kind. The game doesn't pause. It never does. You watch your ring disappear into another player's pouch. You pretend not to care, because that's part of the ritual too. The illusion that none of it matters, that it's just things, just stuff. But the ache in your chest says otherwise. You look down at your hands, now empty, and wonder what they're worth. What you're worth. You've bet what you could carry, and now you carry less. And still, the game invites more. It always asks for more. Not because it needs it, but because you offer it. Because something in you believes that one more round will turn the tide. And until you have nothing left, nothing at all, you'll keep believing. There are tables, yes, but they're rarely empty and never neutral. The ones closest to the fire are claimed by men who don't move unless someone makes them. The corner tables are worse, half shrouded in shadow, claimed not by people but by moods. So you end up near the door, near the cold, near the leaking wall, and that's where the real games happen. A barrel turned sideways becomes a playing surface. A plank across two crates works just as well. Some don't bother with elevation at all. They crouch on the floor, knees bent, backs curved, heads low. The dice roll into dirt and dried ale, picking up dust and splinters. But no one complains. The surface is irrelevant. What matters is the motion, the throw, the shout, the brief intake of breath before the dice settle. You could be anywhere. On stone, on straw, on bare earth. It wouldn't change the game. You're not playing on something. You're playing against something. Time, luck, the weight of needing. You join a game on the ground without being invited. That's how it works. You see an open space, you squat. You throw something down, coin, token, ragged button, and it's understood. The others glance up, then down, then resume. No welcome, no refusal. One player throws from a knee, another from a hand that trembles slightly. The floor groans beneath shifting weight, but no one notices. There's a crack in the wood underfoot, and the dice sometimes vanish into it. That doesn't stop the game. A stick is used to prod them loose, or a replacement is found, or nothing is said. You roll again. Sometimes your legs fall asleep. You shift to lean on your elbow. Your back begins to ache. Still, you stay. Comfort is not the goal. Presence is. You play not for pleasure, not even for hope. You play because you're still allowed to. Because the floor will hold the dice even when your hands can't. Every now and then, the floor is cleared for something else. A fight, a spill. A man passed out in his own wager. The game shifts sideways, without pause, without ceremony. Players pick up what's theirs, move a foot or two, and continue. The rules are fluid. Not fair, not consistent, but understood. A woman tosses her dice against the leg of a stool. It bounces back at an angle, but no one questions the throw. Another player rolls on the edge of a mat, half torn, half burnt. The dice stop against the frayed fabric, and he grins as though it matters. It doesn't. Not to the game. Only to him. In this space, everything is makeshift. The ground doesn't belong to anyone. yet everyone claims it. Each square of dirt becomes sacred for as long as the dice are moving. Then forgotten, like names, like promises, like everything else in this room that can't be held in a hand or spent in a hurry. You start to forget what a real table feels like. The kind with corners and clean edges. The kind with room to lean your elbows, to rest your arms, to breathe without being jostled. Here you crouch until your knees crack. You hunch until your spine sings. You roll the dice with fingers that cramp and sting and smell of oil and dust. You learn how to balance without comfort, how to play without expectation. The floor is hard, but dependable. Unlike people, unlike luck. It accepts each roll without judgment. It doesn't care what you've lost. You start to appreciate that. The indifference. There's honesty in the filth, in the scuffed boards and stone patches and scattered straw. You're not better than this. No one here is. That's why it works. That's why it lasts. The floor doesn't ask for more than you can give. Just a place to kneel, a place to play, a place to lose what's left of your grip on the world above it. It happens fast. Too fast. One good throw, a few gasps, a clatter across the uneven wood, and suddenly the coins slide your way. They don't fall. They're pushed, reluctantly, from hands that twitch, from fingers that pause just a little too long before letting go. The pile isn't large. Not really. A few coins, a copper buckle, something that might be silver but probably isn't. And yet, the moment feels heavy. Not with wealth, but with attention. You don't need to look up to know they're watching. The eyes burn against your skin. Not impressed. Not friendly. Not even angry. Just calculating. How did you win? Were you lucky or clever or something else entirely? The man across from you hasn't moved. His hand still hovers where the dice landed, as if waiting for a different result. The woman beside him tilts her head, just slightly. Her mouth doesn't smile, but her eyes narrow. Around the edges of the game, a silence starts to gather. Not full silence, but the kind that swells just before a bottle breaks or a blade appears. You try to breathe evenly, calmly. But the wind clings to you like a scent you can't shake. You want to pocket the coins quickly, but not too quickly. You don't want to gloat, but you also don't want to linger. Every motion is now a performance. How you smile, how you speak, if you speak at all. The space around you feels tighter than before, as if winning shrank it, made it harder to move, to exist without stepping on something you shouldn't. You glance at your winnings. They're already less than you thought. A dented token, a bent spoon, a button. Was that all? You wonder if someone already palmed a piece while your eyes were on the dice. You don't ask. To ask is to accuse. To accuse is to invite trouble. You tell yourself it doesn't matter, that you weren't here for the money, that winning wasn't the goal. But something in you tightens anyway. Not with pride, but with regret. You miss the feeling of being invisible, of losing just enough to be left alone. The man to your left leans back, stretching like someone who's not stiff at all. His arm brushes yours, deliberately, not hard, just enough. You pretend not to notice, but he knows you noticed. The game continues without you. That's another part of winning. It removes you. You're no longer a player. You're a result. And results are dangerous. They change the rhythm. They draw attention. From the barkeep, who looks over for the first time in an hour. From the men by the fire, who now glance your way between gulps of ale. From someone at a table you hadn't noticed until now. You realize you don't remember if you spoke during the game, or how loud you were, or whether you laughed when you shouldn't have. The memory is foggy already, like it happened to someone else. You place one coin into your boot, another into your pouch. You leave one on the table, intentionally, as if to say, "See? I'm not greedy. I'm not here to take. Just playing, just passing through." But no one believes that, and neither do you, because something inside you did want to win, even if you didn't plan it, even if you know better. And now that you have, you're not safer. You're marked. The loss that would have stung an hour ago now feels like mercy, a clean cut, a known cost. But a win? A win is unpredictable. It changes how people see you. It shifts your weight in the room. It makes you stand out when all you ever wanted was to disappear into the background noise. You take a step back from the game, just slightly, and someone moves into the space you left behind, as if you're already gone. As if the game didn't just give you something, as if it took something instead. You walk away slowly, not sure whether your back is a target now. Not sure if you should feel proud or afraid. Probably both. Probably neither. Winning feels worse than losing, because losing ends. Winning just begins the next part. And that part, whatever it is, you didn't ask for. The tavern doesn't care. It creaks and leans and soaks up everything around it, but it never responds. The walls are warped with moisture and time, and they hold the echoes of countless games, countless losses, countless names mumbled and then forgotten. No one thanks the tavern. No one curses it. It simply is. A shell that holds the same noise, the same gestures, the same desperate hope, over and over again. You might think it watches, that the beams above your head notice who's winning, that the floor groans louder when someone cheats. But it's not true. The building has no favorites. The tavern doesn't lean toward the noble or the poor. It doesn't tighten in disapproval or stretch in joy. It receives, that's all, like a rag pressed to a wound, like a grave, open and patient. The tavern absorbs what you lose, what you give away, what you forget to take with you, and it never gives it back. You notice it most when the laughter stops. Not because of silence. There is no silence here. But because something changes in the rhythm. A pause between shouts. A hush that slides under the clatter. That's when the tavern feels thickest. Like its air turned solid. Like it knows something is about to happen and simply won't say. A man stands too quickly. A mug drops. A chair tips. The room swells with tension, but the tavern does not react. The wood does not split. The walls do not tremble. If blood hits the floor, it darkens the boards for a while, then fades. If someone screams, it's just another sound folded into the fabric of everything else. The tavern doesn't protect you. It doesn't expose you. It offers no guidance, no signs. It holds you like a mouth holds breath, briefly, without meaning. You exist inside it, but it never quite lets you belong. The ceiling sags but does not fall. The hearth smolders but gives no real warmth. The windows are fogged or boarded or forgotten, so whatever time exists outside cannot reach you here. The passage of hours happens through games played and hands raised, not by clocks or bells. The tavern has seen too much to bother with measuring time. It smells of damp wood, of spoiled wine, of hair and smoke and something like despair, long dried but never cleaned. The scent clings to your clothes. It gets into your skin. You leave the tavern and carry it with you, even if you don't notice, even if you try not to. Every splintered board and crooked beam holds pieces of 100 other nights. Bits of shouting, of wheezing, of pleading, of coins tossed too hard and apologies muttered too late. If the tavern had a memory, it wouldn't be made of stories. It would be made of smells and stains and breath. You sit on a stool with one leg shorter than the others. It rocks slightly, like the whole room's tilting. Behind you, someone coughs into their sleeve again and again. You glance at the bar. The barkeep cleans a cup that never empties. He doesn't look at anyone. Maybe he's been here forever. Maybe he's part of the building now. He doesn't care who plays or who cheats or who slumps forward and doesn't get up again. The tavern doesn't punish. It doesn't warn. It doesn't offer redemption. But it also doesn't forget. You can feel it, even if you can't explain it. When you leave, if you leave, you'll feel eyes on your back. But it won't be from the people. It'll be from the weight of the walls themselves. The wood will remember your footsteps. The soot will remember your breath. And when someone sits in your place tomorrow, the tavern won't say your name. But it will feel like it knows it, because you left a part of yourself here, without meaning to. And the tavern, as always, kept it. Silently. The first mug doesn't taste like much. It's warm in a way that isn't comforting, thick at the edges, almost sour. You drink it anyway, because it's there, and because your throat is dry from smoke and silence and waiting for your turn to lose again. The second mug goes down easier. The heat spreads slower this time, crawling into your chest, loosening your shoulders, dulling the edge of every glance you catch across the table. You feel bolder, not smarter, never that, but bolder. Your hand moves without hesitation. Your voice rises. Your bets swell beyond what you meant to offer. You smile too wide, laugh too long. Your body relaxes in ways your mind doesn't approve of. Still, you keep drinking, not to forget, not yet, just to stay in the rhythm. The room feels softer around the corners now, less jagged, less threatening. You start to believe that maybe this is your night, that maybe the dice have forgiven you. You don't notice the third mug until it's already in your hand. Someone else might have paid for it. Maybe you did. The details blur. You grip it loosely, almost affectionately, and drink with the kind of trust you'd never show a man. The world grows louder, not outside, but inside your head. You lean into the table, into the game, into the noise. Your movements lose precision. You knock over a coin. It rolls, wobbles, vanishes into the straw. You laugh, because that's what you're supposed to do. Everyone laughs with you, or at you. It's hard to tell. Your eyes drift. Your thoughts slide sideways. You try to focus on the dice, but the numbers don't mean as much anymore. Your last bet was generous, too generous. A coat button, a knife, and something you borrowed. You think. You're not sure. The rules bend easily when you stop noticing them. You don't feel shame. Not yet. Just a pleasant, floaty warmth where your judgment used to be. The loss doesn't hit you right away. There's a cushion of ale-softened time between action and consequence. You sit there blinking, not understanding why everyone's looking past you now, why the game has moved on, why your hands are empty. The memory of what you wagered flits in and out of reach. You remember the laughter, your own voice too loud, someone clapping you on the back. Then nothing. Then this. Just you at a table that no longer includes you. You reach for your mug again, but it's gone. You're not sure when you finished it. You feel slow. Not tired, not drunk, just slow. Like your thoughts are trying to swim through something thicker than your own head. You blink again. The room tilts, and it's not the stool's fault. You stand, or try to. Your knees disagree. You sit again, too quickly. No one helps. No one mocks. You're not worth the attention. Not yet. Maybe soon. Later, how much later you can't say, you find yourself at another table, or on the floor. It doesn't matter. There's another drink in your hand. Maybe someone gave it to you. Maybe it was left behind by someone who lost faster. You sip it like it matters, like it will bring back what's gone. But it doesn't. It just softens the edge of the emptiness, the growing awareness that you've given away more than you meant to. Not just money, not just trinkets, but time and clarity and something like dignity. You wonder how many mugs it takes to reach this point. You wonder if anyone counts. Then you forget the question. Someone near you laughs and you join in a beat too late. Not because it was funny, because it's easier than thinking. The ale makes you brave, yes. It loosens your mouth and lifts your hands. But it slows everything else. Your thoughts, your senses, your grip on what matters. You came here to gamble, and you did. With your coin, with your caution, and now, with your memory. Everyone has a method, a tilt of the hand, a muttered word, a certain way of breathing between rolls. They call it luck, but they treat it like ritual. One man always rolls with his left hand, even though it shakes. He says it brings him balance. Another insists on tapping the dice twice on wood before the throw, like it'll make them remember who he is. There's a younger one who stares down the dice before each round, like he's threatening them into submission. They all believe their trick works, until it doesn't. But by then, it's not the trick's fault. It's the table, the lighting, the wind through the cracks in the wall. Anything but them. No one ever blames themselves, not really. To do that would mean facing the truth, that the game doesn't care who's clever. The game isn't impressed. The game just takes, and takes again. Until all that's left is the shape of a man who used to believe he had a system. You sit across from them and listen. They talk between rounds, between drinks, between failures. One claims he can read faces, says he knows who's bluffing just by watching their left eye. Another swears by counting, by tracking which rolls land and how often. You nod, not because you believe them, but because belief isn't the point. The story is the game, the illusion that this time will be different, that preparation and strategy matter more than timing and chance. They wear their cleverness like armor, but it's cracked and thin and patched with memory. You've seen them lose again and again. You've seen them storm out and stumble back in, still clinging to the same ideas, the same rules they made up to explain why the world doesn't bend their way. And maybe you have your own trick too. Something you do without noticing. A lucky coin. A prayer you don't call a prayer. Something small. Something foolish. But comforting. Until it breaks. It always breaks. That's the secret no one says out loud. Not when they're sober. not when they're winning. But late in the night, when the room has emptied a little and the air is heavy with old smoke, someone always cracks. They lean forward, voice low, eyes unfocused, and admit it. I thought I had it figured out. And then I didn't. And then it was gone. Just like that. They say it once, like a confession, and then laugh, a short, brittle sound, and then they go back to playing. Because stopping means acknowledging there was never a plan. Only patterns dressed as logic. Only hope, stretched thin and pinned to dice. You realize, listening to them, that cleverness here isn't about outsmarting others. It's about outlasting your own doubt. Convincing yourself over and over that losing is just a temporary step in a longer strategy. That if you just keep moving, just keep betting, just keep thinking, you'll stay ahead of the fall. But you don't. No one does. Eventually, the trick stops working. The dice land wrong. The rhythm fails. The breath goes out of sync. And when it happens, there's no fanfare, no moment of reckoning. Just silence. A small, dry silence that feels larger than it is. The man who rolled stares. His hand stays out too long. He looks around, waiting for someone to tell him it was a mistake. But no one does. No one ever does. The game moves on. His cleverness, once spoken like gospel, vanishes in the space of one failed round. And he knows. He won't say it, but he knows. And tomorrow, or the next night, he'll come back with a new trick, a new method, a new reason to believe. Because everyone in this room thinks they're clever, until the moment they don't. And even then, even after that, a small part of them keeps believing anyway. Because without that, what's left? Just luck. And no one here trusts luck. Not anymore. There's no house here. No dealer in clean sleeves. No velvet table. No fixed odds. No quiet man in the corner tallying percentages. Just people. And they don't wear uniforms. They don't smile politely. They don't enforce rules. Because there are none. Not written, not agreed upon, not even whispered in the back before the game begins. There's only the moment, the pressure of eyes, the weight of each breath, and the constant shifting of who has the upper hand. You look around for someone to mediate. Someone who might speak if a bet's unclear or a throw is suspicious. No one speaks. Everyone watches. Everyone waits. And if you ask, if you try to question the result, the silence thickens. It's not that they didn't hear you. It's that you broke a rhythm they need. You're not just playing the game. You are the game. And here, fairness is a weakness. Rules are an illusion. And the only thing more dangerous than cheating is being too obvious about catching it. You realize it slowly. That the man beside you has no reason to be honest. That the woman across the barrel smiles with her mouth, but not her eyes. That every time someone wins, someone else looks down too quickly. There's no higher authority to appeal to. No bell to ring when something feels wrong. If a coin disappears, it was never really yours. If someone palms a die and rolls 2-3 times before anyone notices, and then claims they only rolled once, you're expected to keep playing, to pretend you didn't see. Because to see and say something is to break the unspoken pact that keeps this whole thing from catching fire. This isn't about luck. It's about survival. And the only rule that matters is this. Don't show weakness. Not in your face, not in your voice, not even in your breathing. Because weakness draws attention. And attention here is never a gift. There's no dealer, but someone always takes charge. Quietly, subtly. A man whose voice carries more weight than his hands. A woman whose nod is more final than a shouted verdict. They don't announce themselves. They don't want power. They already have it. You notice how the coins shift more easily when they speak. How the game pauses just slightly when they lean forward. You think maybe they're the ones keeping order. But then you watch them cheat, or lie, or fold the game in their favor with a glance, and no one stops them. Because power here doesn't come from authority. It comes from fear. From knowing no one will intervene. That this place has no center, no frame. That the tavern holds the people, but the people hold the game. And the people want blood, or money, or something to pass the time before the next day swallows them whole. And they don't care how they get it. You play anyway. Because you don't have a choice. Because you already sat down. Because walking away now would make you look like prey. You roll the dice and keep your face still. You lose without flinching. You win without smiling. You pretend not to notice the missing coin, the rigged throw, the way someone else's foot stays planted too long against your boot. You stop looking for the house. There is none. Just shifting allegiances, whispered names, debts owed from nights ago. You understand now that you were never playing against the table. You were playing against them. All of them. And they were playing against you. Even the ones who laugh. Especially the ones who laugh. Because here, the game isn't about chance. It's about staying in. About knowing when to speak and when to vanish. About learning that the absence of rules isn't freedom. It's just a different kind of trap. One that smells like ale and sweat and cold wood. One that doesn't care who you were before you sat down. Only who you'll be when you leave. If you leave. It leaves your hand too easily. The coin, the token, the ring that once belonged to your father's coat. It crosses the table like it was never really yours. No hesitation, no protest. You don't even remember deciding to bet it. It felt natural in the moment. Just another stake, just another turn. But once it's gone, something inside you tightens. Not because of the item itself, but because of how quiet the loss was. No thunder, no sting, just absence. And once it's on the other side, it's gone. Even if you win the next round. Even if your luck turns. Even if you rake in twice as much. You never get back that. It's not how this place works. The tavern isn't a ledger. It doesn't track who owed what, or who might reclaim what they once gave away. Every round resets the board, but not the damage. And some things, once offered, don't return. Not in form, not in meaning, not even in memory. You try. Everyone does. You catch a streak, and suddenly your hands are full again. Coins clink. Trinkets stack. A knife here, a pendant there. Your pouch is heavier than it was an hour ago, but none of it feels right. It doesn't weigh the same. It doesn't settle in your pocket the way your old things did. You touch the buckle you just won and realize it's too sharp, too polished, like it still belongs to someone else. Because it does. Everything here is second-hand. Nothing you gain was meant for you, and nothing you lost comes back in the same shape. Even if you spot it across the room, your ring, your scarf, your coin with the chipped edge, you can't ask for it. You can't prove it. And even if you could, you wouldn't. Because the only thing worse than losing is begging. And begging implies value. Better to let it disappear. Better to pretend it was never yours to begin with. The real loss isn't in the object. It's in what goes with it. The memory, the association, the thread that tied it to something clean, something distant from this place. A piece of you traveled with it across the table. Not a limb, not something anyone could see, but something real. And now it's inside this room, part of the noise, part of the dust that clings to the rafters. You thought maybe you could win enough to reclaim what you were before you arrived. That, with the right throw, the right gesture, the right face across the table, something would click into place. But nothing does. The more you win, the further away you feel from what you had. As if the act of trying to recover has warped the thing itself. The past doesn't want to be bargained with, and the present doesn't leave room for retrieval. It only moves forward, dragging your losses behind it like a trail you're too tired to follow. So you stop trying. You still play, of course. You have to, but you no longer chase. No longer build your wagers around the idea of balance. The game isn't a scale, it's a whole. And the deeper you go, the harder it is to see what you dropped along the way. You begin to carry less, not because you've learned, but because you've run out. You look at your hands and think of the things they once held. Letters, laces, the curve of someone's wrist, the handle of a door you should have walked through and didn't. Those aren't here. They won't be. And nothing you win tonight, or any night, will bring them closer. You understand now why the veterans of this place sit so quietly, why their eyes never follow the dice. They've made peace with what can't return, and perhaps, in a way, they're freer than you. Because while you still hope, still reach, still think there's a way back, they've stopped pretending. They've lost enough to know the truth. In this room, nothing returns, and if it does, it isn't yours anymore. No one here uses their real name. Maybe not out of fear, though fear is part of it, but out of habit. Names, like coins, change hands too easily. You ask the man across from you where he's from, and he says south, which could mean anything. You ask his age, and he shrugs. Old enough to know better, he answers with a smile that doesn't quite reach his eyes. You don't press, because you know the same is true of you. You said your name was Tomas, or Marek, or something that sounded unthreatening, forgettable. You said you were passing through, that you weren't here to stay. But here you are. Same table, same stale air, same coin in your pocket that you pretend is luckier than it is. The lies aren't sharp, they're soft. Not meant to deceive, only to smooth the edges, to keep things moving, to keep things quiet. Truth in this place is too heavy to hold. Some lie about how much they've lost. They say they're down a few coins, but you watched them put their coat on the table 2 hours ago. Others pretend they're playing for fun. Just a game, just a night out. But their eyes never leave the dice and their shoulders never drop. One man insists he owes nothing to no one. You hear his name whispered from 3 different corners in one night. Even the barkeep lies. Says the ale's fresh. Says the meat was cooked today. Says he doesn't remember who started the fight last week, though the bruise on his temple says otherwise. Lying here isn't a crime. It's survival. It's a language. The only rule that matters is not getting caught. And even then, if you're caught gently, with style, with grace, people laugh. If you're caught badly, well, the laughter stops, and something else starts. You don't want to know what. You catch yourself lying without meaning to. You say you've played before, even if you haven't. You say you've had worse luck, even if this is the worst. You say you're fine when you're clearly not, and no one calls you on it. Not because they believe you, but because they understand. The table isn't a place for truth. It's a stage. Everyone playing a role. The brave loser, the quiet winner, the indifferent observer. You pick a face and hold it until it sticks. And if someone sees through it, if someone looks at you too long, too closely, you lie again. Shift the story. Change the subject. Pour another drink. The goal isn't to be believed. It's to keep moving. To stay in motion, like a coin spinning just before it falls. Maybe this isn't deception. Maybe it's protection. Maybe the truth is simply too expensive to spend here. And yet, sometimes, the lies unravel. Not with drama, not with shouting, just slowly. A pause, a wrong answer, a flicker of something real behind the eyes. And then it's gone. Swallowed back. Covered up. You pretend not to notice because you've done the same. Maybe earlier tonight. Maybe every night. Everyone in this room is hiding something. Who they are, what they owe, what they fear. Even the ones who seem solid, who laugh loudly and throw generously, especially them. You don't blame them. You can't. You understand now that truth doesn't belong in places like this. It's too sharp, too fragile. The walls wouldn't hold it. The air wouldn't carry it. And the people, you, them, all of you, wouldn't know what to do with it. So you lie. About your age, about your name, about how long you plan to stay. You lie softly, like everyone else, and the tavern listens. It doesn't judge. It just remembers. Quietly. Completely. The tavern is dim, but not dark. Darkness would be easier. It would hide the cracks in the walls, the stains on the tables, the crusted lines around mouths that haven't smiled in honesty for years. Instead, there's light. Just enough. A single candle stub on the table. A flickering lantern above the bar. A fire smoldering low in the hearth, barely giving off heat, but casting long, thin shadows that reach farther than they should. The light doesn't illuminate. It exposes. It catches the edge of everything unpleasant. The dirt beneath a fingernail, the threadbare patch in someone's cloak, the bruise beneath an eye, fading yellow at the edges. You can see just enough to know what you're looking at, but not enough to pretend it's clean. There's no glamour here, no comfort in illusion. You see the world as it is, and the world is cracked, stained, frayed. The light doesn't save you. It just shows you that no one else is saved either. You glance across the table and notice the man opposite you rubbing something between his fingers. You think it's sweat at first, then maybe dried blood. It doesn't matter. He doesn't stop. The candlelight catches on his ring, brass, not gold, and on the jagged cut across his thumb. You look away, then back. His eyes are on the dice, but he knows you saw. That's the game here too. The watching, the not watching, the pretending not to see what's right in front of you. The candle flickers again, throwing the shadows of your hands across the table. They look longer than they should. Thinner. You flex your fingers, but they don't feel like yours. The light plays tricks, but not the kind that comfort. It doesn't soften. It sharpens. Every crease, every scar, every particle of grime becomes a map of everything you've been trying to ignore. You see more than you want to. The smear of something dark on the wall. Maybe old wine, maybe not. A smear that's been there long enough to become part of the place. The glint of a knife tucked into someone's boot. Blade barely visible through a torn seam. The hollow under a woman's cheekbone where the skin clings too tightly. She smiles, but the light makes it clear that the smile isn't for you. It isn't for anyone. You see your reflection in a mug of ale, distorted, rippling with every tremble of your hand. You don't look brave. You don't look smart. You just look tired, and the light confirms it. It reflects off your eyes in a way that reveals more than you meant to offer. You begin to understand why some players choose the darkest corners. Not to hide their moves, but to hide their faces, their histories, their weight. In the light, there's nowhere to place what you've lost. No darkness deep enough to bury it. The longer you sit, the more you wish for the candle to die, for the lantern to sputter out, for the fire to be only smoke. Because maybe then, the smells would be just smells, not attached to people, not tied to mouths and hands and feet that shuffle across sticky floorboards. Maybe then, you could throw your dice without seeing the dirt under your own nails, without being reminded of what you've touched and what you haven't. But the flame persists. It leans and dances and leers, and in its light, you see it all. The tavern doesn't need brightness, to be honest. Just enough glow to make you wish you couldn't see. Just enough truth to make you wonder how long it's been since you looked at anything without turning away. The game continues. The players shift. The night crawls forward, and the light, soft, flickering, cruel, never quite goes out. You can smell it before you see it. Not the luck itself. Luck has no shape, but the moment just before it lands. The way the air thickens around a player who's winning. How their skin grows damp, not with fear, but with energy. A sourness, familiar but heightened, like the heat that rises from a horse after a long run. Their collar sticks to their neck. Their hands shine with grease and ale. There's a flush to their cheeks, not from drink, but from momentum. Luck clings to the skin like steam, earthy and sharp. You sit next to a man on a streak, and it seeps into your own breath, whether you want it or not. Sweat and smoke, always. Sweat from the body, smoke from the room, the same smells that linger when you're losing. The difference isn't in the odor, it's in how others react to it. When you're lucky, they lean toward you, noses wrinkled, but watching. When you're not, they lean away, as if rot might spread from your pores. The tavern never changes its scent, but your nose learns to separate it. The fire in the hearth has burned the same logs for hours, but now the smoke feels closer, heavier, tinged with meat, or maybe damp wool. You start to associate it with failure, because the smoke always seems thicker when your coins are gone. Or maybe it's just that you notice it more. The man who just won 3 hands in a row smells no cleaner than he did before, but now his scent carries weight. Confidence, perhaps, or defiance. A man who's winning walks differently. Louder steps, broader stance. The sweat under his arms still stinks, but now it smells like proof, like effort rewarded. He wipes his brow with the same sleeve he used when he was losing, but now it feels like a ritual. You breathe it in, his breath, his heat, his temporary victory, and part of you wants it. Not the money, just the aura of momentum, of being watched with curiosity instead of pity. Your own body betrays you. You sweat when you win, because the blood rushes. And you sweat when you lose, because fear has its own temperature. The seat beneath you grows damp either way. The table absorbs your pulse through your elbows. You smoke more when you're nervous, but you also smoke more when you're feeling bold. The difference is subtle. One cloud curls upward like a question. The other hangs low and confident. You watch the woman across from you blow smoke from her nose, and it spirals toward the candle. Her luck is rising. You can tell. Not from the coins she gathers, but from the way her scent begins to shift the mood of the table. Others notice. They start to fidget. One man rubs his hands together too quickly. Another scratches his chest. It's not hygiene. It's atmosphere. Her luck is becoming physical, palpable, and soon it'll be too much. Someone will challenge it or try to steal it. Because in a room like this, luck is just another thing to be hunted. Later, when the game's slow and the air settles, the smells don't fade. They ferment. Luck gone sour is worse than bad luck. A man who was winning and then wasn't smells like panic. His shirt sticks too tightly. His breath catches. His skin exudes regret. No one wants to sit near him. His odor is familiar now, mirrored by your own. You wipe your neck and wonder how long it will linger. The fire's smoke coats the back of your throat. You don't cough. Coughing draws attention. You stay still, sweating silently, trying to remember the last time you smelled clean linen or fresh rain. You can't. Not here. Not in this place where luck has a scent, and that scent never changes. It only deepens. You wonder if you'll carry it with you when you leave. If someone outside will sniff the air near you and know, this one played too long. This one let the tavern seep into his skin. This one smells like dice and desperation, like someone who's been touched by luck and left holding nothing. It doesn't happen all at once. First a coin you don't have, then a hand you shouldn't have played, then silence where there was once tension, then a nod from someone who isn't smiling, and you're out. You don't stand. You don't argue. You just stop being part of the motion. The dice no longer roll in your direction. The glances pass over you. Your presence dissolves into the background hum of the tavern, like smoke thinning into the beams. The chair beneath you feels harder now, the table colder. You place your hands flat on the wood, as if that could keep you tethered, but no one's looking. The players lean forward toward someone else. A new laugh takes your place. A hand slams the table. The game shifts, expands, absorbs. There's no space for you anymore. You've been replaced without fanfare, without thanks. The coins you lost are part of the pot now, moving between others' hands, warm from fingers that never touched yours. You watch the dice tumble across the boards you once leaned on. They move quickly, as if trying to forget you. Someone wins with your last coin. You know it, but they don't. Or they do and they don't care. A new hand enters the game, one you didn't see before. Maybe he was watching from the back wall, or maybe he just came in. It doesn't matter. He's seated now. You're not. The tavern has a way of making transitions seamless. No one marks the change. No one misses you. You try to follow the flow of the game, but it blurs. You can't tell who's winning, who's bluffing, who's pretending. You realize how much of the game depended on your involvement. Not your presence, but your investment. Without it, the movements feel distant, mechanical, and still they continue. Faster, louder, more confident than before. As if your absence lightened the air. As if the table breathes easier without your weight on it. You think about standing, but your legs don't respond. Not from injury, from inertia. You lean back instead, listening to the coins slide and the dice land and the voices rise in rhythm. Someone says something close to funny, and the table erupts. You recognize the shape of the laughter. You've heard it before. Once it was yours, or near you. Now it's far. Now it doesn't turn toward you. You reach for your mug and find it empty. You forgot you finished it. Or maybe someone else took it. You look around, not for help, not for another game, but just to be seen. But the faces are turned inward, toward the game, toward the stakes, toward the movement you're no longer part of. You could disappear and no one would notice. Not immediately, not tonight. You feel the shape of that realization settle behind your ribs, dull and unmovable. Eventually, you do stand. Slowly, like someone learning how to balance again. Your hands brush the table, not to steady yourself, but as a quiet farewell. No one speaks. No one stops. The game doesn't pause to acknowledge you. The tavern doesn't shift. The chair doesn't creak. You take a few steps, not toward the door, not toward anything, just away. The warmth of the game fades behind you, replaced by a colder air that belongs to the outer ring of the room. The watchers, the almost players, the forgotten. You're one of them now. If you stay long enough, maybe you'll find another table. Maybe you won't. But the game, the one that mattered, the one you gave your coat and coin and hours to, is still going. Without you. And it's not mourning your loss. It's not even remembering it. The only thing that remembers is you. And even that won't last. Because in this place, memory is as fleeting as fortune. And when you're out, you're out. The game goes on and you don't. At first, you think it's just you and the player across the table. One man, one game, one set of dice. You watch his hands, his posture, the way he breathes before he throws. You think if you study him long enough, you'll understand the rhythm. You'll know when he's bluffing. You'll know when to fold, when to risk, when to press. But after a few rounds, something shifts. A cough from behind, a glance from your left that lingers too long. You notice a smirk not from your opponent, but from a man leaning against the wall 3 feet away. The room is watching, not passively, not idly, but deliberately. They're part of it, all of them. And you're not playing against a man anymore. You're playing against an atmosphere, against a shared history you're not part of, against a tavern full of eyes that don't blink and ears that don't miss a word. The opponent in front of you is just a placeholder. The real game is bigger. You lose a hand, and someone in the back exhales, too pleased. You win a round and hear a glass set down too loudly, as if to reset the balance. Every move you make is echoed, countered, mirrored by someone who shouldn't matter. You start to realize that the people behind you, beside you, even the ones who seem to be asleep, are part of the logic. They shift the weight of the game with their presence. The man you're playing nods once toward the fireplace, and suddenly someone walks by, bumping your arm just enough to send your dice off course. You don't accuse. You don't speak. You've seen what happens to those who do. The room protects its own, and you're not one of them. You're a guest, a visitor, a threat to the balance. Every small win you take feels like theft, like pushing against a tide you didn't know was there. And the tide always pushes back. There's no referee, no voice to call foul. If you sense a pattern, two players signaling each other, coins moving where they shouldn't, rules shifting mid-hand, you keep it to yourself. The room has ways of closing ranks. You've seen it happen. A man shouts about being cheated, and suddenly no one remembers the bet. The table falls silent, then erupts in noise that washes him away. He stands, furious, and finds himself alone. You're beginning to understand. This isn't about fairness. It's about flow, harmony, even when it's cruel, even when it bleeds. The tavern maintains a rhythm, and your presence interrupts it. Unless you learn to move with it, unless you learn to lose quietly, win cautiously, speak only when you've earned the right. You look around and realize that every regular here has learned that lesson. The laughter is coded, the silence intentional, and you're the only one still trying to win by the rules of the table. So you change. You stop watching just your opponent. You watch the room, the glances, the nods, the pauses. You listen not just to words, but to tone, to silence between phrases. You shift your seat so you can see more. You keep one hand on your pouch and the other near your chest. You play less to win and more to survive, less to understand and more to blend. Because this tavern isn't a room, it's a creature, breathing, pulsing, watching. It smells your doubt, it senses your pride, and it plays back. Not kindly, not fairly, just constantly. You thought the game was with dice and coin and nerve, but it's not. The game is with the air, with the noise, with the people who never sit but always watch. And now that you see it, now that you feel it, you know. You're not just playing against the man across from you. You're playing against the room, and the room always wins, eventually. They come in looking different, but they leave the same. The poor arrive first. Thin coats, eyes bright with hunger, sometimes with fire. They carry little, sometimes just a coin, sometimes only something they can talk someone into accepting. They sit fast. They play fast. Every bet is a decision between staying and leaving, between one more throw and walking out with something still in their pocket. But they don't walk out. Not really. They stay too long, too eager. They think the table is fair. They think the dice notice effort. And the tavern, sensing this belief, opens just wide enough to swallow them whole. It starts small. A lost button, a wasted drink, a bet made just to stay in the game, then more. Until their hands tremble, not from nerves, but from the cold creeping back in. Until they forget what they came to win, or that they ever had anything worth holding on to. The poor lose first, not because they're weaker, but because they hope harder. The rich arrive later, not late in the hour, but late in the rhythm. When the tavern is already thick with noise, with smoke, with quiet losses that smell like sweat. They don't rush. Their coats are heavier, their pouches louder. They sit like they expect to be seen, and they are. The room doesn't respect them, but it notices them. They play slower. Their losses are quieter. A coin here, a wager there. When they win, the celebration is muted. When they lose, it's measured. They can afford to wait. They can afford to lose a little. They treat the game like it owes them pacing, and for a while it plays along. The dice don't love them, but the room does not devour them immediately. The rich stay longer. They leave later. Their shoes stay on their feet. Their names stay mostly their own. But time is patient, and the tavern hungers evenly. What it doesn't take quickly, it takes thoroughly. You watch them both, the poor who claw for air, the rich who sink slowly. The desperation looks different, but it ends in the same place. The poor beg first. They talk too much. They offer stories in place of coin. They gesture toward futures that won't come. The rich beg quieter. They try to barter with dignity, a favor, a name, a promise backed by nothing but their tone. Neither is heard. The tavern doesn't negotiate. It doesn't weigh the value of your background. It just takes. And when you have nothing left, no coin, no coat, no clever words, it leaves you there, empty, not thrown out, just unneeded. The seat you warmed will be filled again. The coins you lost will circle the table until they wear smooth. And no one will remember whether you came in hungry or full. Only that you stayed. Only that you gave. Only that, in the end, like all of them, you lost. So you sit between them, between the man who hasn't eaten and the one who's never known hunger. And you understand that it doesn't matter who plays best, not here. The poor lose quickly, violently, visibly. The rich lose politely, invisibly, with a longer leash. But both leave lighter, both leave changed. The only difference is how long they get to pretend otherwise. You keep your head down. You don't laugh when you win. You don't curse when you lose. You make your bets with the same hand, no matter what it holds. And maybe, just maybe, that will buy you a little more time, not to win. There is no winning, only staying, only fading slower. Because in the end, the tavern keeps no accounts. It remembers no names. The poor lose first. The rich lose last. But all of them lose, just as you will, just as you are. You didn't say where you were going. Not really. You muttered something about bread, about checking the market, about stepping out for just a bit. The words came easily, too easily. No one questioned you. Maybe they didn't want to. Maybe they already knew. You closed the door softly behind you, as if silence could erase intent. And then you walked. Past the market, past the baker's stall, past the alley where the cats fight over bones. You took the turn without thinking, the one that leads downhill toward the place with the warped sign and the door that always sticks. The tavern was already calling you before you saw it, not with sound, with memory, with the familiar pull of unfinished business and unspent luck. You reached for your coin pouch before you reached for the handle. You knew it wasn't full. You knew it wouldn't matter. You told yourself it was one game, one round, a short visit. But you were already lying, even then. It wasn't your first lie. It won't be your last. You've lied in bigger ways, to more important people. But this one stings differently. Because it was small, because it was easy, because it felt like habit. You didn't flinch when you said it. You didn't hesitate. You told them you'd be back before sunset. You smiled like someone with nothing to hide. Maybe you even believed yourself. That's the most dangerous lie of all, the one you half believe. You didn't mention the coin in your pocket. You didn't say you were planning to bet the knife you swore you'd keep for safety. You didn't mention the ring you tucked into your boot, just in case. You walked out like a man with a purpose, like a man with control. And now, hours later, your hands are empty, and you can't remember how many throws it took for the evening to slip through your fingers. There's a weight in your stomach now. Not hunger, though that will come, but the hollow kind. The kind made from choices too quiet to be heard until they echo. You think about the faces you left behind. Did they believe you? Did they watch you go with trust? With indifference? With a silent sigh they've exhaled too many times already? You can't know. You're not there. You're here. In this room where no one asks questions unless they want to know too much. You could tell the truth now. To someone. To anyone. Say it out loud. I lied. But what would it change? Nothing returns in this place. Not coins, not names, not honesty. You look around and wonder how many others said they were going somewhere else tonight. How many promised to be back soon? How many swore they were done? That they wouldn't return to this chair, this game, this version of themselves. You wonder how many even remember what they promised anymore. The truth is still waiting for you, back behind that door you closed so quietly. It's not angry, not yet. It's just patient. It sits at the edge of your bed, at the foot of the table you once shared, in the silence you left behind when your footsteps faded. It doesn't chase. It waits. And when you finally return, if you return, it will greet you without warmth. Not because it wants to punish, but because it never wanted to be lied to. You tell yourself the lie was harmless, that everyone needs a little escape, that the coin wasn't worth much, that they'll understand. But you know better. Lies grow roots. They tangle into the walls of your life. They live longer than truth. You sit here now, in the heat of the tavern, in the stink of sweat and wood smoke, and you realize you didn't just lie to them. You lied to yourself. And the worst part isn't that you came here. The worst part is that you'll do it again. You already know it. You already feel the next lie forming, soft and simple, waiting to carry you back down that same road. It starts as a small discomfort, a twinge in your belly, easy to ignore, masked by the noise and the movement around you. You shift in your seat. You stretch your shoulders. You roll the dice again. The hunger isn't sharp yet, just a hollow whisper under the ribs, like something waiting for attention. But attention is too expensive here. Every breath you give to yourself is one less for the game. So you let it slide. You tell yourself you'll eat after the next hand, after the next lucky throw, after you win back what you lost 3 rounds ago. You're sure it's coming. The win, the pause, the break for something warm, something filling. But it doesn't come. And you don't move. You play on, ignoring the emptiness blooming in your stomach like cold fog. One hand on the dice, the other resting on the table, steadying you against a world that no longer moves in time with your body. Hours pass like minutes, or maybe the other way around. You stop tracking them. You stop tracking everything except the turn in front of you. The next bet. The next glint of a coin in someone else's palm. Your thoughts slow, but your hands keep working. You throw with muscle memory now. A twitch, a release, a weight. You nod at the result without seeing it. The hunger deepens. Not pain, not sharpness, just a growing weight. A pressure behind the ribs, a weakness in the knees you haven't stood on in too long. Someone walks by with a plate. The smell hits you like a slap. Meat, bread, oil. Your throat tightens, your teeth ache, but you say nothing. You keep your eyes on the table. You keep your hands moving. Because to stop now, to ask for food, to admit need, that would break the spell, and spells are all you have left. You begin to tremble, not from fear, not from cold, but from depletion. Your fingers slip once and someone laughs. You don't know if it's at you. You don't care. You grip tighter. You lean forward. You try to press your spine into the shape of determination. But your stomach growls, loud enough this time to be noticed. The man beside you raises an eyebrow, says nothing, just marks the sound with a glance and returns to his drink. You swallow air. It burns. Your last coin clinks against the wood as you place it forward. Your hand shakes. Not enough to matter. Yet. But enough to feel it. Enough to know the edge is coming. The edge where thinking slips, where judgment fails. You play worse when you're hungry. Everyone does. But the tavern doesn't care. The game doesn't pause for meals. There are no breaks for bread, no time for broth. You eat later, if there's anything left to buy it with. Eventually, the hunger becomes background noise, a constant hum behind the ears, low and steady. You lose count of how many hands you've played. Your head feels light. Your tongue is thick. Your hands are moving slower now, but still moving. The dice drop. The coins pass. The game continues. But you are fading. Not dramatically. Not all at once, just quietly, inch by inch. You can feel your body working harder to stay upright, to pretend nothing is wrong. But it is. The emptiness inside you is no longer asking. It's taking. Strength, clarity, patience. You reach for your mug and find it dry. You don't remember drinking it. You don't remember the last thing you tasted, the last thing you swallowed. You remember the last bet. You remember the last loss. But not food, not warmth, not care. Somewhere out there, beyond the tavern, someone might be eating. Somewhere there might be soup, but not here, not now. You forgot to eat, and the game remembered. They told you how to play. Simple rules, spoken quickly, as if they hardly mattered. You nodded, trying to keep up. It sounded straightforward. Roll, match, wager, win. But even as the words left their mouths, you sensed something off. The tone too casual, the gestures too fluid, as if the game lived in their bones, but not in their mouths. Still, you joined. You bet. You played. You trusted that what they said was what they meant. For a while, it even made sense. The throws landed. The coins moved. A rhythm began to form. Not perfect, but graspable. You leaned into it. Not comfortably, but with a cautious focus, like walking across ice you're not sure is frozen through. And then, without warning, the rhythm shifted. Not with sound, with silence. A pause too long. A glance too sharp. You won a hand and no one moved. Someone coughed. Someone scratched their beard. And then the man across from you spoke a new rule. Softly, firmly. A rule you'd never heard before. You blinked. You tried to remember if that part had been mentioned. If you missed something. You ask, not loudly, just enough to show confusion. The answer comes flat. Always been that way. No explanation, no discussion. The others nod, not because they believe it, but because it's easier than disagreeing. You feel the floor shift under you, not physically, but somewhere deeper. The understanding that this game isn't about consistency, it's about control, and you don't have it. You try to adapt. You tell yourself it's minor, one rule, one misstep, but the game doesn't stop changing. Next, a bet you thought you matched is now too low. Then a throw you thought counted is waved off. You look around, searching for a face that might show sympathy. There is none. Everyone is too busy keeping up with the new rhythm, or pretending they already knew it, or waiting to see if you'll fall far enough behind to matter. You don't argue. You can't. There's no arbiter, no board to point at, no written law to defend your case. You realize that what you're playing isn't a game, it's a performance. And you're the only one who didn't get the script in advance. The others speak in half gestures, in shared memory, in a code you don't understand. Maybe they're making it up as they go. Maybe they aren't. Maybe this is how it's always been. You stop asking questions. You play with your head low, trying to match patterns, to anticipate what will shift next. It doesn't help. The rules change again, this time about what counts as a full stake. You offer your ring, and someone shakes their head. Not enough now. It was enough 3 hands ago, but not anymore. You reach for another token, but the hesitation costs you. A sigh from the left, a smirk from the right. The room is growing impatient with your ignorance. Not your failure, your slowness to accept it. By the end, you're not playing. You're reacting. Not to the game, but to its constant mutation. You've stopped hoping to win. You only hope to not embarrass yourself further. To lose quietly. To exit unnoticed. But even that is difficult now. Every move you make is delayed by uncertainty. Every bet you place is too small, too late, too hesitant. You're not behind on luck. You're behind on information. And there's no way to catch up. The game won't pause for you. The others won't explain. They're not being cruel, they're being natural. You are the outsider. You are the confusion. You are the reason the flow stutters. And in a place like this, flow is everything. So you nod. You agree. You act like you knew. Like this rule, too, was something you simply forgot. And the game lets you stay. Not because you belong, but because you've stopped trying to make it make sense. The rules will change again. You don't brace for it. You just prepare to lose under the new ones, quietly, as expected. You don't notice him right away. No one ever does. He doesn't shout. He doesn't throw dice. He doesn't make a show of winning or losing. He watches. From the edge of the room, from the shadow beside the door, from the corner of your eye where your attention doesn't linger. He might be playing. He might not. His presence is quiet, but not forgettable. You glance once, then again, trying not to look like you're checking. But you are. Everyone is. You're not sure when he arrived or if he ever left. His face doesn't carry rage. It carries stillness, the kind that makes your stomach tighten without knowing why. And if you look long enough, you'll see the handle. Worn, plain, hidden well, but not too well. He wants it to be seen. Not brandished, not flaunted. Just known. Like a fact. Like gravity. Like hunger. The knife exists, and so does he, and that is enough to shift the room. Sometimes it's in a boot, sometimes on a belt, sometimes tucked inside a sleeve with the edge of the grip showing only when he lifts a cup too casually. He never touches it without purpose. He doesn't need to. The tavern does the rest. The air adjusts itself around him. People lower their voices. Bets are placed with more care. Accusations are swallowed or postponed. You wonder what his story is, whether he lost something too valuable or too many times, whether he's been wronged, or whether this watching, this waiting, is his game. Maybe he was cheated once and never forgot. Maybe he never trusted the rules in the first place. Maybe he carries the blade because someone has to. Because order in a place like this doesn't come from fairness. It comes from the possibility of consequence. Not justice, just interruption. A reminder that no loss is ever entirely contained to the table. You don't know his name. Maybe no one does. But you notice how the players closest to him never raise their voices, how chairs don't scrape too loudly when he's near, how drinks aren't spilled in his direction. You see the way the barkeep eyes him without meeting his gaze. Respect, maybe, or caution, or the kind of memory that comes with bruises and silence. He might not even need the knife. He might never use it. But its presence changes the temperature. Every tavern has one, maybe two. Men who've crossed a line so long ago that coming back isn't an option, who keep to the edge but influence the center, not by force, by proximity, by potential. You begin to understand that in a room like this, everything exists on the edge of escalation, and the knife is not a threat. It's a signal, a pressure point, an anchor in a place where too many people drift too far when coin runs out. You keep your hands visible. You measure your voice. You learn to lose with less expression, because the man with the knife is not watching the game. He's watching the people. He's watching you, not because you're important, because you're here. And everyone here is a variable. Everyone is one bad throw away from becoming a problem. So you make yourself small, unremarkable, not as weakness, but as wisdom. You've seen what happens when someone forgets the knife is there, when tempers flare too quickly, when accusations come too sharp. The flash of steel is brief, the aftermath quieter than expected. No drama, no lesson, just blood on wood and the sound of footsteps that don't return. And after, the game resumes, always. Because the knife doesn't stop the game, it preserves it. It reminds everyone that even in chaos, there are boundaries. And one of them is him, always watching, always waiting, and always armed. It's not always coin that clinks onto the table. Sometimes it's something quieter, a nod, a promise, an object placed with just enough hesitation to draw eyes, a ring, too delicate for the hand that carries it, a ribbon still holding the faint scent of someone else's skin, a knife with initials scratched into the hilt, clearly not the player's own. You notice these things slowly, piece by piece, like the way rot spreads in silence. At first it's just suspicion, a sense that the story behind the item doesn't match the face offering it. Then the shape becomes clearer. The bet isn't theirs. It was borrowed, stolen, taken in a moment of desperation or pride. The ring might have come from a nightstand, the knife from a brother's belt, the coin from a coat left hanging too far from reach. No one asks, not directly. But everyone sees, everyone knows, and no one stops it. Because in this place, ownership is negotiable. Value is all that matters. You sit at the table while a man offers up his word. Not a thing, not a trinket or token, but a vow. That he'll repay, that he'll return, that this hand will be different. He speaks like he believes it, and maybe he does. Maybe belief is part of the currency here. He places nothing down, but the others nod, and the game continues. You realize then that not everything needs to be visible. Not everything needs to be real. A story can be a stake, a name dropped at the right moment, a title no one bothers to verify. One player offers the name of a merchant who'll pay double in the morning. Another swears his father's blade is waiting just outside, ready to be retrieved. Lies, probably, but lies told with confidence. And in the tavern, confidence often spends better than silver. The cost of the lie comes later, after the game, when debts are remembered in alleys and shouted through clenched teeth. You watch a woman bet a brooch still warm from someone else's neck. She doesn't say where she got it. No one asks. The metal catches the candlelight, and the room pretends not to see the smear of wax or sweat on the back of it. Another man lays down a piece of parchment. He doesn't say what's written on it, only that it matters, that it has weight, that someone somewhere will want it back. You believe him, and that's enough. The rules here don't require truth, only conviction. The more someone insists a thing is theirs, the longer it holds value, until the illusion breaks, until someone comes looking, until a debt is called in, not with words, but with fists or steel or silence. But for now, the table accepts it. The table always accepts it, even if the tavern does not. The tavern remembers. It holds these items like wounds, like questions. It doesn't return them. It just waits for someone to pay the rest of the cost. And they always do, sooner or later. The man who wagered his brother's knife finds himself followed home. The boy who used a stolen coin to buy in returns to find his pockets already turned out. The woman who promised more than she could deliver learns that promises, once broken, don't just disappear. They compound, they grow teeth, and in a room like this, nothing is ever truly forgotten. You think of what you brought tonight, what still belongs to you, what might not. You wonder how many of your own bets were made on borrowed ground. A coat given by someone who asked you not to lose it. A ring that came with a name you never spoke again. A vow to return before nightfall. Everything can become currency here. Even love. Even memory. Even guilt. You look around the table and realize that no one is betting what they have. They're betting what they shouldn't. And that's what keeps the game alive. Not honesty, not fairness, but the thrill of risking what was never yours to give. There's no final hand, no triumphant win, no clean loss, no one standing up with satisfaction. The game doesn't build toward anything. It doesn't climax or resolve. It breathes, slow, uneven, constant. One round melts into the next without ceremony. You throw, you lose, you win, you throw again. Sometimes you forget to watch the result. Sometimes you forget what you bet. You blink, and the table has changed. New faces, new coins, new shadows. But the rhythm is the same. The fire crackles, the ale sloshes, the dice tumble, and still no one leaves. Not really. Someone stands, stumbles, disappears through the door, but another takes their place before the chair cools. The game doesn't notice. It doesn't care. It has no memory, just appetite. You find yourself rolling even when you don't mean to, just to keep the silence away, just to stay part of something that doesn't ask who you are, only what you're willing to risk next. You tell yourself you'll stop after this round, after this bet, after this win. But the breath you take after each throw isn't a pause, it's a bridge, a momentary float between one loss and the next. You feel your fingers twitch toward the pouch, the pocket, the table. You look around and see the same twitch in others. Eyes glazed, posture sagging, but still playing. No one knows how long it's been. The tavern has no clock. Time here is measured in throws, in drinks, in the weight of silence between turns. Morning doesn't arrive. It leaks. Slowly, behind the shutters, behind the barkeep's eyes, behind your bones. Your body protests, legs numb, throat dry, hands aching, but the game continues. You don't ask how, you don't ask why. Questions are for people outside the rhythm, and you're not outside anymore. You're deep in it. You're part of the hum that keeps the dice moving, the coins clicking, the breath catching at the edge of every outcome. Sometimes blood ends a game, a shout, a blade, a crash. But even then, the silence that follows doesn't last. It holds for a moment, out of habit, not shock, and then recedes. Another hand is dealt. Another throw begins. The man who bled is dragged out, or left slumped, or forgotten entirely. The table reshapes. No lesson, no judgment. The game is not offended by violence. It just shifts around it. You think maybe something will break, that someone will call for rest, for reason. But they never do. They light another candle. They pour another drink. The game absorbs the moment and keeps going. Because there is no end, not here. The only thing that ever changes is the face of the one who loses next. You watch the door, not for escape, but for signs of the outside world. There are none. Just more players arriving. Just more coins passed between hands that should have stopped shaking hours ago. And so you stay. Not because you're winning, not because you can't leave, but because leaving would mean admitting the game is over. And it isn't. It never will be. Not until your last coin, your last breath, your last piece of self small enough to fit in someone else's palm. You're not sure what you're playing for anymore. Maybe you never were. But that doesn't matter. What matters is that your hand still reaches, that the table still accepts, that the room still leans in every time the dice hit wood. There's no applause, no farewell. Only the next round. Only the next stake. Only the next quiet exhale as you realize it's happening again, and again, and again. Until morning, or blood, or both. You know you've lost something. That much is clear. There's an emptiness in your coat, in your pocket, in your hands. Something that used to be there and isn't anymore. But you can't say what it was. A coin? A token? A ring? It could have been all of them. It could have been more. You remember the sound of the dice, the slosh of ale in a half-cracked mug, the laughter that never quite reached your ears. You remember leaning forward, breath caught, the table sticky beneath your palms. You remember raising your voice, not in anger, in insistence, trying to make a point that didn't matter 5 minutes later. You remember betting something, something that meant enough to make you sweat when you let it go. But the image of it is gone now. Blurred, replaced by the rhythm of the game that didn't stop, didn't pause, didn't acknowledge the weight of what you placed on the table. It's not just about the object. It's about the feeling that slipped with it. The certainty, the conviction. You were sure then. You had a reason, a calculation, a gut instinct. And now? Nothing. Just the dull ache of absence. You pat yourself down, not because you expect to find anything, but because it's something to do. Your fingers brush fabric, skin, dust. No answers. The man across from you rolls again. The dice bounce twice, land unevenly, and the others nod. The game continues, with or without your memory. That's what makes it worse. Not that you lost, but that the game never paused to mark it. No silence, no shift, no acknowledgement. Just movement. You try to retrace your steps. Did you trade your belt? Your scarf? Did you offer something you shouldn't have? Someone's name? Someone's trust? You don't know. You don't even know if you meant to give it away. The more you try to remember, the further it slips, like grasping at smoke with tired hands. The players beside you don't help. They don't speak. They've seen this before. A man staring at the table like it holds a secret he forgot he told. You wonder if they know what you lost, if they were watching, if someone else at this very table now holds what once was yours. You look at the pile of coins, tokens, folded cloth, rusted trinkets. Nothing sparks recognition. Nothing calls to you. And yet you feel it. The absence, clinging to your ribs like damp wool. Something is gone, something that mattered. But the space it left behind has no label, no shape. Just a silence you carry like a second skin. You take another drink, not because you're thirsty, but because you hope it might stir the memory loose. It doesn't. It never does. Eventually you stop trying, not out of peace, but out of exhaustion. The forgetting has won. The tavern has taken more than your coin. It has taken your context, your place in the chain of bets and losses and nights blurred into one another. You sit quietly now, not because you've finished, but because you don't know what comes next. You don't know what's left to offer. You glance at your hand. You look at your coat. You think about your name. And for a moment, even that feels uncertain. You've thrown. You've shouted. You've laughed. And now you sit in stillness, unable to trace the line from then to now. The only thing you know for certain is that something is missing. Maybe many things, maybe too many. And all you have left is the weight of the absence and the sound of the dice still rolling, just out of reach. There were moments when you could have left. You remember them, not clearly, but as flickers, like the way light spills through the crack in a shutter. A pause between rounds, a lull in the noise, a glance toward the door when no one was looking. Your body knew the way out. Your boots still had enough leather to carry you. Your hands were empty, yes, but your legs still worked. No one barred your path, no hand on your shoulder, no voice in your ear, just the tavern, breathing and alive, indifferent to your decision. You told yourself you'd go after the next round, after one more drink, after you win something back, after the laughter dies down, after it gets quiet. But it never got quiet, and you never stood. Something held you there, not ropes, not threats, just the weight of being in it, the comfort of rhythm, even when it hurt, the seduction of loss, because at least it still meant something was happening. You looked at the door more than once, not to count the steps, just to prove it was still there, still an option, still real. Others left. You saw them go, some stumbled, some ran, some simply vanished between blinks, and you stayed. You told yourself you were studying the game, watching for patterns, waiting for your moment. But the truth was softer than that, more dangerous. You stayed because moving meant choosing, meant ending, meant admitting that what you were waiting for wasn't coming, that the table wasn't about to turn in your favor, that the next throw wouldn't change anything. So you sat, hands folded, eyes drifting. You listened to the sounds, the scrape of dice, the sigh after a loss, the muttered jokes that never quite landed. These were the sounds of staying, the soft, sticky rhythm of giving up without saying the words. Your legs stopped responding like they used to, not from exhaustion, but from habit. They folded beneath you and stayed there, stiff but obedient. You thought of standing only in the abstract, like a distant idea, like memory. The longer you stayed, the harder it became to imagine motion. The weight of the room grew around you, not pressing, but settling, like dust, like ash. You forgot what fresh air felt like. You forgot what time it was. You forgot what you told yourself before you sat down. At one point, someone bumped your arm, hard enough to jolt you. You looked at them, but they weren't looking back. You weren't part of their story. You were part of the furniture now. Something to play around, something to ignore. And still, you stayed. Not because you were trapped, because the idea of leaving began to feel stranger than the idea of staying. The door was too far, the silence outside too uncertain. Now, the question lingers. Why did you stay? And the truth is, you don't know. Not exactly. You can invent reasons. You were tired, you were cold, you were curious, you were trying to win something back. But none of them fit. None of them explain why your body remained long after your hope dissolved. Why you kept reaching for dice with hands that no longer expected anything. Maybe it was inertia. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was something simpler. A kind of quiet acceptance that this, whatever this is, was yours now. Not forever. Just for now. Just until the next silence, the next spill, the next reason to believe the next round might mean something. And so you stayed. And so you're still here. And the tavern doesn't ask why. It doesn't need to. It knows what you don't say. That no one kept you. And that was the worst part. You could have left. But you didn't. At first, you think it's coincidence. A glance that slides past you. A conversation that ends when you turn your head. A smile meant for someone else. But it happens again. And again. No one meets your eyes. Not the winner collecting coins. Not the loser slumping in his seat. Not the man leaning on the beam by the fire, sharpening a knife that may never be used. Their gazes brush your shoulders, your hands, the space just above your head, but never your face. You look up during a roll, hoping for some sign of recognition, some brief moment of shared presence. Nothing. Just lids lowered, eyes averted, interest deflected. You wonder what they see when they look at you. Maybe nothing. Maybe something they don't want to carry. Maybe a reflection of their own fear, mirrored back with too much clarity. Because in this place, contact isn't comfort, it's risk. And no one here wants to take on more risk than necessary. The winners don't look because they don't want to acknowledge what they took. Not out of guilt. Guilt has no real purchase in the tavern. But out of superstition. They know the balance is fragile, that today's fortune is tomorrow's debt, that looking into the face of someone you just beat might draw something dark from the air. So they keep their heads down. They count quietly. They tuck their gains away like secrets. They move on to the next round without ceremony. The losers don't look for different reasons. Shame, maybe, or exhaustion, or a learned reflex to disappear when the weight of the room shifts against them. You've been on both sides, and it doesn't matter. The rule holds. Eyes low, faces blank, presence diluted. You sit there trying to read the people around you, and all you get is posture, tone, movement. Never the truth. The truth is in the eyes, and the eyes are always elsewhere. Sometimes you try to force it. You hold your gaze longer. You angle your body so it's harder to avoid. You speak just slightly louder than necessary, hoping someone will meet your eyes out of instinct. It almost works. A flicker, a pause. And then they turn, or shift, or suddenly find something urgent to study in their cup. The room is practiced at this. The tavern teaches it. Looking too long invites questions. Questions slow the game. And no one wants that. Because when the game slows, you have time to think. And thinking is dangerous. It reminds you what you've lost, what you brought, what you meant to do when you arrived. So everyone keeps the game alive, keeps it moving. And part of that movement is distance. Emotional, physical, visual. You're here, but you're not seen, not fully. And maybe that's what you wanted. Or maybe that's what you've become. A shape, a sound, a hand that throws and loses and throws again. Eventually, you stop expecting it. The eye contact, the recognition, the human gesture. You drink without raising your head. You roll without watching the faces around you. You speak only when required. You become part of the rhythm, efficient, quiet, faceless. You think it will feel like peace, but it doesn't. It feels like drift, like being carried downstream without resistance, without anchor. The tavern accepts this. It welcomes it. It thrives on people becoming less visible, less real. The fewer eyes that meet, the easier the night passes, the easier the losses settle, the easier it is to forget there was ever anything else. And still, some part of you remembers, some part waits, hopes that someone, someday, will meet your gaze without fear, without calculation, just honestly. But honesty has no seat at this table. Only hands, only coin, only silence. And so you don't look either, because no one does. And because here, to look someone in the eye is to risk remembering who you are. At first it hurt. Every coin lost, every trinket slid across the table, every bet that left your hand lighter. The sting wasn't just about the object. It was about what it meant. A chance slipping away, a door closing, a future shrinking. You watched your pile grow thin and your breath grow shallow. You tried to calculate, to control, to resist. But the tavern doesn't reward resistance. It rewards surrender. Slowly, over time, the losing stopped feeling like failure. It started to feel like relief, like gravity, like something honest in a room where everything else lies. When you lose, you know where you stand. You don't have to pretend. You don't have to perform. You just place the coin, throw the dice, and watch the rest of it fall away. There's no pressure in loss, no strategy. Just clarity, just silence that wraps around you like a warm, worn coat. And you begin to lean into it. With every round, the fear dulls. The expectations fall off your shoulders. You no longer search for the lucky streak, the big turn, the sudden reversal. You stop hoping. And with that, you stop hurting. You move through the game like a ghost through a memory, present but untouchable. The others still play with urgency. They sweat, they swear, they grip their tokens tightly. But not you. You open your hands, you let go, and in return, the tavern softens around you. The noise grows quieter, the judgment fades. The weight of needing to win, to change something, to prove yourself, it vanishes. What's left is simple. One more throw, one more loss. One more piece of yourself traded for nothing, and still, nothing feels broken. The table takes your offering and gives you back a strange kind of peace. You're not trying anymore, and that makes you invisible. And invisibility here is safety. You start to recognize the others who've found the same quiet. They sit like you, still unfazed. They don't win often. When they do, it's by accident, and they hand the victory away as quickly as it came. Their eyes are dull, but not dead, just focused inward on something simpler than gain. You nod to one of them across the table. They don't smile, but they understand. There's a rhythm to this kind of losing, a grace, a surrender that looks like weakness but feels like truth. You see the newcomers panic at their first loss, see them scramble to recover, see them bargain with chance, and you feel a strange pity for them, not because they lose, but because they haven't yet learned to appreciate it, to welcome it, to let go of the fantasy that the game ever belonged to them. The loss is a gift. It empties your hands. It empties your mind. It empties the part of you that once demanded control. And in that emptiness, you can finally rest. You still play, but not to win. You play because the rhythm comforts you, because the sound of the dice feels like breathing, because placing a bet is the only motion that still feels natural. You don't watch the others anymore. You don't track the pot. You don't measure time. You live between the throws, between the losses, and each one brings you closer to the bottom of yourself, where the noise stops and the pressure lifts. You begin to like the losing, not as punishment, not as failure, but as release. You know how this ends. You've known for a while, and knowing is better than hoping. Hope demands energy. Loss just takes, quietly, gently, completely. And so you stay. Not because you believe in the next round, but because, in losing, you've found something steadier than luck, something that doesn't change with the roll, something that doesn't need to be earned. You lose again, and it feels right. And for the first time in hours, maybe days, you exhale. The noise never stops. Not really. It shifts, it softens, it crawls from corner to corner, but it never disappears. Even in the quietest moments, when no one is shouting and no mugs are being slammed down, the tavern hums. A low murmur, made of half-breathed curses and boots dragging across uneven floorboards. The creak of old wood. The wet throat clear that happens too close to your ear. The sharp snap of dice on wood. Always the dice. You've heard them so many times that their rhythm has replaced your own. They roll when you blink. They land when you breathe. Even when you step outside, the echo follows. The wind doesn't clear it. The street doesn't quiet it. Somewhere beneath your ribs, the tavern continues to murmur. It's in your bones now, in your blood, in the back of your skull, where sleep used to live. There was a time, you think, when silence meant something, a space to rest, a pause between burdens. But that memory is dim now, smothered by the constant press of sound that fills the room, the air, the cracks in your thoughts. You wake from a half-doze at the table and realize your ears are ringing, not from noise but from the absence of it. A false silence, one that holds the ghost of every sound that came before. Someone laughs, and it cuts through you like a knife. Not because it's sharp, because it's familiar, because it reminds you that the noise is real again. The murmurs return, the clatter, the uneven tempo of breath and tension and bets. You rub your temples, but the rhythm doesn't stop. You close your eyes, but the noise keeps playing. You try to remember what stillness felt like. You can't. The silence you knew is gone, replaced by the sound of staying too long. Even when the tavern grows thin with sleep, when half the chairs are empty and the candles burn low, the noise remains. A chair scrapes, a throat moans, a die is flicked by a hand too tired to grip it. You lie back against the wall, not to rest, but because there's nowhere left to lean forward. The sound doesn't fade. It simply settles into new shapes. Your name, spoken in a whisper that no one else hears. The thump of your own heartbeat, now mimicking the roll of dice. You can't tell if the noises are still around you or only inside your head. You don't ask. You don't speak. The tavern hums through you like a second pulse. You think maybe silence would hurt now. Maybe it would feel too large, too open. Maybe it would echo with everything you lost in this room. So you welcome the hum. You accept the constant noise. It's the only thing that proves you're still here. And when, finally, you do step outside, whether to piss, to breathe, to lie about going home, you find the quiet unbearable, not peaceful, empty. It's too open, too wide, too clean. The stars feel too far away, the night air too sharp, and still, in the quiet, you hear it, the tavern, behind you, inside you, a rhythm you can't unlearn, a sound you no longer know how to live without. You realize you've forgotten what true silence feels like. Not quiet, not rest. Silence. The deep, steady kind that once lived in forests or beds or long walks with no destination. That silence is gone, replaced by the permanent echo of a place that never truly sleeps and never truly lets you go. Even when your hands are empty, even when the room is half dark, even when no one is speaking, the tavern still hums, and you, inside or out, hum with it, because you stayed too long, because the dice kept rolling, because the silence left you first, and you didn't even notice. When you finally stand, there's no applause, no goodbye, no pause in the game. The table continues without you. The players barely lift their eyes. Your footsteps are soft, almost apologetic, as if afraid to interrupt the hum of the room you were part of for too long. You don't announce your departure. There's no door slam, no dramatic turning of your back. Just a quiet rising, a slow pull of your weight from the bench. Your legs feel stiff, as if the wood grew into your muscles. You move like a man older than you are. Your coat, if you have one, is thinner than when you arrived. Your pouch is lighter. Your shoulders curve inward. You don't notice it at first, but everything about you bends now, like you're trying to take up less space, make fewer ripples in the world you're walking back into. The tavern doesn't miss you, and already you feel its weight receding behind you, but it's left its mark. Outside, the air hits differently. It's not fresher, just colder, sharper. There's no relief in it, only contrast. Your ears, dulled by hours of shouting and dice and clinking mugs, now twitch at every distant footstep, every bird, every breeze. The silence isn't peace. It's a reminder. Your hands still tremble. Your breath still smells of ale and desperation. You walk, but it doesn't feel like progress. Just movement. Just the continuation of something you didn't finish. You wonder if you left anything behind, and then realize it doesn't matter. The things you lost weren't just coins or boots. You lost parts of yourself. The parts that used to laugh, that used to hope, that used to believe you'd only stay an hour. You don't remember what time it was when you entered. You don't even know if it's the same day. But you know you're not the same man who walked through that door. People pass you, and you don't look up. Not because you're ashamed, because you've forgotten how. Eye contact feels too loud now, too revealing. Your steps are small, careful, as if you're not sure where the road is leading or if it's leading anywhere at all. You don't head home, not yet. You don't want to face the questions, the half-empty cupboard, the bed that somehow feels more accusing than inviting. So you wander a little. Not far, just enough to give your mind time to settle, though it doesn't. Your thoughts are slow and sticky, like the floorboards of that room. Every idea coated in the smell of sweat and smoke. You don't feel cleaner out here, just more exposed. The weight inside you hasn't lifted. It's shifted. From your hands to your chest. From your pockets to your posture. You carry it now, quietly, constantly, like something earned, but never asked for. Later, maybe minutes, maybe hours, you will return to some version of normal. You'll speak to someone. You'll eat something. You'll sit in a chair that doesn't wobble, but none of it will feel the same. Because you don't. There's a dullness in you now, a smoothing of edges. You flinch slower. You speak softer. Not because you're calm, because you've been worn, rubbed down to something smaller, something quieter. The tavern didn't break you. It didn't have to. It just waited. It watched you chip away at yourself with each bet, each joke, each loss. And now you leave as someone who knows too much about himself, about what he's willing to risk, about what he can't get back. No one else will see it. You'll smile. You'll nod. You'll say the night was fine, but inside something settled, heavy, permanent. You don't leave a place like that the same. You just learn to walk a little slower, speak a little less, and hope, quietly, that no one notices what you left behind, or what you brought with you. You know the road even with your eyes closed. It's all puddles and cracked stones, but your feet find the way on their own. No sign glows, no voice calls, and yet, you walk. Hands in your pockets, chin tucked low, your steps slow like you're just out for air. But you're not. You're returning. Not because anyone is waiting, not because anything calls, but because something inside you clicked, and now you're here again. The silence in your head got too sharp. Or maybe the noise did. Maybe you even told yourself this time would be different. That you'd just sit in the corner, just watch, just drink one mug. Maybe you'd place no bets at all. But you already know what you'll wager. First your glance, then a word, then a boot, and then, once again, nothing. You walk like everything's fine. Past familiar faces, past women selling potatoes, past the dog with eyes like old coins. No one calls after you. No one asks where you're headed. Because they know. Because it's all happened before. Maybe even yesterday. Maybe you never cooled down. Never quite forgot the smell of scorched wood, sour ale, and men's backs. Or maybe you did forget. Maybe that's why you're walking back. Because forgetting made space, and now that space needs filling. The door will be as heavy as you remember, its hinges sighing like they always do. And still, you'll push it open. Not fast, not slow, just enough to let yourself in, and to let the noise welcome you again. Inside, nothing has changed. The air is thick, the light is low. Someone is laughing too loudly. Someone is already losing. A few faces turn as you enter, but only for a second. You're not new. You're not strange. You're just another weight in the room, another breath added to the fog. No one marks the moment. You sit where you always sit, or maybe somewhere slightly different, pretending that difference means anything. Your hands hover near your pouch, even if it's empty. You tell yourself you're only watching, only passing time. But time doesn't pass in here. It coils. It repeats. It folds over itself like a snake curling into warmth, and you're inside it now. Again. You could have gone anywhere else. Home. The fields. A chapel, a path with no names. But your feet chose this. Or your hunger did. Not the hunger of the stomach, but something deeper. A hollow between the ribs that aches without reason. You thought the losing hurt, but the not playing was worse. The world out there has no rhythm, no sound of dice, no rise and fall of shouted bets. Out there, your thoughts are too loud. In here, they dissolve into smoke and clatter. You could have started fresh. You could have turned left instead of right, but the mud clinging to your boots said otherwise. You were already halfway back the moment you stepped outside. Now the night begins again, though it never truly ended. The players change, but the game stays the same. New hands, same sweat. Different faces, same lies. You catch a coin between your fingers, not yours, maybe never was, and it feels like coming home. But home doesn't smell like blood and ale. Home doesn't cheer when you fall. Still, you came back. Not for glory, not for revenge, just because there was nowhere else to go. And now the table waits, the room breathes, and your shadow joins the others, quietly, unquestioned, as if it never left. The stool is rough beneath you, the kind that digs into bone without mercy. It's not your seat. It's not anyone's. But you lower yourself onto it like you've done it 100 times, because you probably have. There's no warmth left in the wood, no cushion, no welcome. Just a plank balanced on uneven legs, and you settle your weight on it as if it matters, as if you matter. You have nothing left to offer this place. Not coin, not charm, not even the illusion of luck. And yet, you sit. Your elbows rest on a surface stained with years of losing. Your eyes drift, not to the game, but just beyond it, as if there's something else to see. But there isn't. Just shadows that flicker in the weak light, and the smell of everything that's ever spilled and never been cleaned. No one invites you. No one pushes you away. You are just there. A fixture, like the smoke, like the broken bench in the corner, like the wet rings left by forgotten mugs. The others don't speak your name. Maybe they don't know it. Maybe they've forgotten. Or maybe names don't mean much here anymore. What matters is the weight you carry, not in your pockets, but in your stare, in the slump of your shoulders, in the way your fingers twitch when dice hit wood. You tell yourself you're only watching, that it's too late to play, that you're done with all of it. But you haven't moved. You haven't stood. You haven't walked away. You just sit. And that, in this room, means more than words. There was a time when you arrived with purpose, with something to win or lose, when your coat had buttons and your boots had soles. You came thinking you had a chance, that the odds might lean in your favor, that you were due a good night, that there was still space between you and ruin. That version of you is gone, stripped, layered, replaced. What remains is a quiet presence, a man-shaped shadow occupying a chair, not hoping, not fearing, just being. It's not resignation, not exactly. It's more like surrender without noise, a settling into the truth that you're not here for the game anymore. You're here because nowhere else makes more sense. Someone wins. Someone curses. Another mug slams the table. A coin clinks, sharp and final. You don't flinch. You don't look. The sound is just air now, folded into the rhythm of your breathing. You sit through it all, through laughter, through silence, through the scrape of a blade being unsheathed and resheathed again. You are not waiting. You are not deciding. You are not even remembering. You are just seated. Still. As though your very being now belongs to the bench and not the body. And maybe that's true. Maybe this is the only place left that doesn't ask who you were, what you lost, or why you're still here. It simply lets you stay. So you do because you can't explain it. Because there's no reason not to. Because still, you sit. Thank you for staying. Not every story needs a hero, not every night needs a lesson. Sometimes it's enough to simply sit with the past and feel that you're not alone in the quiet.